Welcome back to The Making of. I'm your host, Jack Pitts, and this is a show about the real stories behind people building things. The stuff you don't always see, whether that's service businesses, media brands, or something a little more niche. We actually get into what it takes, the pivots, the risk, and everything that happens behind the scenes. Today, I'm joined by Lou Mongello. Lou's an entrepreneur, keynote speaker, and the host of WDW Radio, Walt Disney Radio, a podcast that's been around for over 20 years, and he was also inducted into the Podcast Hall of Fame. He's built an entire business and community around Disney, but what's more interesting is how he got there. He started as a lawyer, also did IT consulting, and eventually made the decision to go all in on something he genuinely cared about, and turned it into a business, a brand, and a platform that's helped a lot of the other people do the same. We talk about the transition, the fear that actually comes with it, and what it really takes to build something around a passion without it just staying a hobby. We also get into lessons he's taken from Disney around leadership and customer experience, and why he's always focused more on people than just growth. If you're trying to build something real or figure out your next move, you'll like this one. Let's get into it. Awesome. Hey, Lou. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. Super excited to have you. How you doing?
Thanks so much for inviting me, man. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, how's your Monday been? I got a lot of snow here in New York today.
Then I will not tell you the weather in Florida. So it was freezing today. It was like in the 60s. So
Yeah. I actually was out for a good 30 seconds today. But you grew up in the New Jersey area, so you're used to some snow at least.
yeah, and I don't miss it at all, man. You never have to shovel sunshine in Florida. So I had enough of it for 40 years and made the move to get away.
Yeah, definitely. And would love to, learn a little bit about your childhood, kind of where you grew up, family, anything you kind of want to dive into there that you think's important.
Yeah, so I grew up in Plainfield, which is like 10 miles south of Newark. Mom, dad, 6-year younger brother than myself. As a kid, always knew what I wanted to be. Always felt like I wanted to be a lawyer. This was not a body that was built for athletics. So I knew that my career path was going to go in a certain direction. And my dad was a lawyer, but I loved watching like Al Pacino and In Justice for All. I loved sort of the theatrics of trial work until I realized that being a lawyer is nothing like what you see on actual TV. So I went to law school in Seton Hall in Newark after graduating Villanova in Pennsylvania. Clerked for a judge in Essex County for a year, and then looked around for a while, but ended up joining my dad's small plaintiff firm. It was maybe 3 or 4 attorneys in the firm. Just this idea of wanting to help people. Every day was a little bit different. We in a general litigation practice. And it was trial by fire, literally like trial by fire. Like you would go, my dad was like, you watch it once and then you're going to, go out and build your parachute on the way down and learn how to do it. But I liked practicing, but I didn't love it. And it took me a few years to realize this was not going to be my long-term career path.
Definitely. That's super interesting. And so you went to Villanova undergrad. So you knew you were going to be a lawyer. Did you go straight into law school? I know, I have some friends that are doing that right now, and it's just like they're getting grinded. I know a couple people doing the paralegal path. They're just like, no one knows.
Yeah. So I actually started off as a theater major. I was a theater kid in high school. So I started off as a theater major, and I literally remember, man, I walked into an improv class one day, and it was like super weird, and everybody was like very like artistic. And I was like, do I want to do this for the rest of my life? I think I'm going to go back to this idea of being a lawyer. And I did that I practiced for about 10 years. I also had a computer consulting company on the side because I was always a computer nerd growing up, and clearly I didn't like sleeping very much. So I would literally I'd be in court in the morning. I'd run to a computer consulting client on the way back, on the ground in my suit, pulling network cable, trying to wire up their systems, go back to my office till 6, 7 o'clock, go home, inhale my dinner, and then do web development till like 2 o'clock in the morning. And that was like my 6 day a week grind.
Wow. Wow. That's super impressive. What was like, were you always, you said you were always a computer nerd. I know you said you did theater. What was your like first job growing up? Were you always kind of like an entrepreneur hustler? I mean, it seems like it.
I did, but I didn't realize it. So my dad was a lawyer. My mom ran my uncle's like medical neurosurgery practice, but they always sort of had this gig on the side. Like we drove everywhere on vacation. My mom didn't like to fly, so they had like always a side business. They had an antique business, and they had like chipwich carts, and they had a bagel store. And I didn't realize that I was learning about entrepreneurship like as it was happening around me. Because like when I was a kid, if you were an entrepreneur, it meant you were a bum. Like you didn't have a job. Like it didn't mean the same thing that it does now. But I was learning about entrepreneurship and like doing things that you loved every day and turning it into a business. And then that sort of light bulb went off for me. And I think I always was too, because even when I was in school, like I was doing computer work for like my dad's friends, and I had like a little DJ business on the side, and it was always like creating stuff and trying to sell it. So I didn't think I was an entrepreneur, but sort of looking back, hindsight being 2020, I think I really was. Like even like the first book I ever wrote, like I literally was like at home manually like binding and printing and like shipping everything out myself. So I was learning the ropes of entrepreneurship without even realizing it.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. What was your first job ever?
Other than working for my parents, because I worked
Yeah.
like in the antique store and I worked in the bagel store. So my first job was at McDonald's for over a
Wow.
summer, and I lied about my age because I really wanted to work there. And I still eat at McDonald's sometimes, even seeing everything that I saw. But again, a lot of little learning experiences along the way.
That's awesome. I actually had another guest on my podcast, and I think he might have been 12 when he did it. He lied about working at a Burger King, just to get a job, but you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
They're a little too, hey, by the book. Not like the good old days.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah, you can get away with a lot more back then.
Yeah, now everything's, digital footprint and everything. So it's also kind of interesting though, you're saying entrepreneur, you had the side hustle, but then you kind of go into a career where, you can be entrepreneur, but it is like law, you're always going to have a job. You're probably going to, always be able to, have someone's going to need legal work no matter what. So that's kind of interesting that you went into that. Obviously you started working for your dad, you clerk for a judge, like, you said you didn't like it. When did you really realize that like, hey, this isn't for me?
So I liked it, but I didn't love it. Like I didn't get up every day like, oh God, I can't wait to go into work. And as the reality of the practice and dealing with clients, sometimes who are not as grateful for your work as they should be. There were certain like moments along the way that I sort of stepped back, and I'm like, is this really what I want to do for the rest of my life? And do I want to get up and argue every day? Like, is this really what's in my DNA? And as my computer consulting business started to take off and I got more clients, and then actually started helping one of my parents' other businesses, being sort of their in-house IT manager, my dad, God bless him, was always super supportive and was like, go do your thing, give this a shot. If you need a place to come back to, you can always come back at half salary, but you have a place to hang your hat.
Definitely. That's super cool. And how did you come up with like the IT consulting business that you were doing on the side? I know you mentioned that, you were always into computers, and like, you're meeting a client midday and then working till 2 a.m. But how did you do that and also, have a social life? I mean, obviously, you're doing it 6 days a week, so it's going to be tough. And, Sundays just for probably football and recovery. But how does that even work?
Jack, social life is a bit of an amorphous thing because, look, growing up, like I was a bit of a nerd, didn't have a ton of friends. And again, thanks to my dad, he always loved tech. He always loved gadgets. So I got my first like Radio Shack Tandy TRS-80 computer when I was really young, taught myself how to use it, and just continued to advance and evolve. Like I was an Apple guy, and then I was really, really into Windows, and I was building computers, and I was doing a lot, and just I was very much all in on it. And I didn't know at the time that I was building a skill set that was preparing me for what was coming in terms of offices and people wanting to network their offices and connect computers. And I had this built-in skill set, and then I got Microsoft certified, and I was a Microsoft certified systems engineer. So I was able to do a lot of things without, and really sort of serve small to medium businesses that didn't have an in-house IT person and couldn't hire somebody full-time. I was sort of their IT department. I was their single point of contact, so I could set up their printers, set up their networks, build their website for them, and then be that single point of contact. And I just sort of fell into it accidentally. My dad would be like, "Oh, you need to." My dad, my son knows how to do this, and it just word of mouth is how I got work.
That's awesome, and super cool that your dad's referring you, helping you grow the business. How was also your relationship, just like working, like another huge thing is just like family businesses. That's what I'm super fascinated with, especially with like a law practice. Like how was that? Seems like you guys have a good relationship, but just like must be an interesting dynamic as well.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because I grew up in family businesses, right? I worked in the bagel store. I went to the antique shows with them. I worked, they had a booth in a flea market in New Jersey, like on weekends. And so I was always there. I was always sort of around the business of it, really. And it's funny, man, that you asked, because when I graduated law school and I said I was going to go work in my dad's firm, I'll never forget this guy was like, "How could you go work with your dad every day?" And I'm like, "How could you not? Like, why would you not work with your dad?" And we had that kind of relationship. And, listen, I know crying is podcast gold. I'm going to not all get weepy, but I was really fortunate to have that time with him, to learn from him, to work with him, going out to lunch together and spend time together. And we had a really strong relationship, and I learned a lot, not just about practicing law, but just life and being a dad from him.
Yeah, no, that must be incredible. And, spending, you spend more time with your work colleagues than you do your family, which is just a blessing that, you get to have your dad as, your boss, the person you can talk to about jobs, life, figuring that all out. How big was your guys' law firm actually?
It was me, my dad. At one point, my cousin was there. At one point, my brother was there, and like two other attorneys. So it was a small firm. We were like family. There was really not a lot of turnover in terms of lawyers or staff.
Yeah, that makes sense, and that's an awesome, great place to work. So I know you end up practicing law for about, what is it, about 10 years? Is that right?
About 10 years, yeah.
10 years. So you're, let's say, 30s. And would love to kind of hear just like obviously Walt Disney, WDW radio is kind of, what you do now full time, but how that kind of interest came up. You have the IT services platform, and how big did that end up getting as well? While you're growing your clients as well.
Yeah, so I was sort of juggling a bunch of clients, both locally and remotely, like doing web work. But once I moved over I ended up going over full time to, my parents had a multimodality medical imaging company, and they needed somebody to really sort of be their network engineer. So it was just sort of a natural progression for me to, again, go over to another family business, but in a very different capacity. But I think the way the Disney stuff happened was, first of all, I've been a Disney fan since I was a kid. We drove down every year. It's just where we vacationed, and I had just great memories of it growing up. I always wanted to learn everything I could about it because I was fascinated about what kept bringing us back to this place, and not just us, but tens of millions of people every year. And I think just from a business perspective and entrepreneurial perspective, like Walt Disney, what he was able to do was fascinating to me. So it's 2003, and I've always been in the service business, right? Practicing law, IT, even my family business has always sort of been service oriented. Mm-hmm. And I think, honestly, man, I watched one too many infomercials late at night. And so I had this idea. I wanted to make something once and resell it. And the idea of a book came to me. And I wasn't smart enough to write about the law or computers. And I was like, I'm really going to set out as a personal challenge to write the book I want to read. I love Disney World. I love the details and the minutia and the trivia. And there was no trivia book out there. So I said, I'm going to see, just as a personal challenge, can I write a book and can I get it published? Because there really was no vanity publishing back in 2003. I literally, I drove to Barnes & Noble and I took all the travel books off the shelf. I sat on the floor and I wrote down the name of every travel publisher, for all the books that I could find. I learned about writing query letters and sample chapters and all the things I had to do. And honestly, man, I think I got my first real important business lesson from that experience, because I sent out 47 query letters to 47 different publishers, and I only got one yes. And the lesson was, you only need one yes. You only need one person to say yes and give you that chance. And I am forever indebted to that small publisher that took a chance on me. I signed a 3-book deal. And so now, I was doing my IT work and I was doing my legal work still at that time. And then, at 10 o'clock, from 10 o'clock at night till 2 o'clock in the morning, I would just sort of bury myself in my basement and write the book I wanted to read.
Definitely. Yeah. And I know the first book was the Walt Disney World Trivia book, Volume 1, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just during this now, that's an incredible story, especially with the, writing 46. I can't even imagine doing something like that and just, figuring that out on your own of how do I do sample chapters? My brain with ChatGPT now is, I can't imagine you actually figured that out on your own, and the grit and perseverance that it teaches you, and just, how much more thankful you are for, that one publisher that took a chance on you. It's incredible.
Without a doubt. Yeah, I think there's a lot of lessons that can be learned by sort of how you deal with, I don't want to even call it rejection, but those sort of brick walls and those obstacles that come up along the way. How you respond and your resilience is really an important indicator of your success going forward.
Definitely. And yeah, that is incredible. And another thing that's kind of just interested in my mind, so I know you have a couple kids. I've talked to your one kid who's at Florida right now. How are you balancing, your life, your career, and just what you really want to do and your passions? How are you juggling all 3 of those things at the same time? That's, something I'm trying to figure out as I'm, 22 in my first corporate job, and, developing relationships, but also working really hard. So that'd be super helpful for me to hear too.
The first 2 words that come to mind are balance and sacrifice. And that's a lot of what people don't see about entrepreneurship. They don't see that on Instagram. Trying to strike that balance, especially if you are a solopreneur, is very challenging, because there's nobody necessarily to keep you accountable or sort of tell you and dictate what your day should look like. You've got to figure that out on your own. So how do you make sure you're doing the work, you're putting in the time, but you're also balancing your marital relationship, if you have them, the relationship you have with your children, and then maybe, if you're lucky, you have time for friends and a social life, and you find all of a sudden that you're spinning, it's not even spinning plates, man. You're almost like juggling bowling balls, because they're all really important, right? And I used to say, you're juggling bowling balls and Fabergé eggs, because they're heavy, and they're also delicate and valuable. And you got to sort of, if one's going to drop, you want to make sure it's not the Fabergé egg, it's not your family, it's not your kids. And then how do you sort of strike that balance it is a lesson, I think, that you never fully stop learning. It's because it always is evolving, especially now that I'm an empty nester.
Yeah, definitely. Being an empty nester, and yeah, it's do I spend my time on my family? Do I spend my time on my health? Or do I put, these 2 extra hours into a business? How did you think about it when your kids were young and all of that, where it's they have sports events, you have to do this, but, you got to get stuff done. Being a lawyer is demanding, being a solopreneur, it's hey, if you don't get this done, I'm going to, Jack over here who's going to get this done in 8 p.m.
And when you're
tomorrow.
a solopreneur, especially early on, and you are a team of one, you are wearing all the hats. So there's nobody else to do it for you, right? You don't build a team necessarily day one. So it is about, where does the give and take happen? And for me, man, The day that I found out my wife was pregnant the first time with our daughter, everything changed because my only focus was now going to be on my kids. It still is, but just I manage it differently because they're not here, right? So spending time with my family, teaching them, spending time with them was of paramount importance. And then I would sacrifice my own time, and I was like, all right, man, you got to work till 2:00 in the morning when everybody's asleep. You can get your stuff done because if you don't, when I say feed your family, I don't just mean literally, but like metaphorically feed your family, like with time with your wife and time with your kids, it's going to crumble. So I sacrifice sleep for that, but that changes too. As they got older, they become more independent. The balance of time changes, but I still put family first. I'll still sort of put other things aside and say no to things because the time that you have with them, is very, very short.
Definitely, especially now being an empty nester, and I'm just seeing this, and I've seen a bunch of graphs before on like Instagram. It's just the time you actually spend with your parents as you get older is just less and less. So when you do have those times where you're going to visit their university or spend a weekend with them, you want to be fully present.
Yeah,
that's definitely something I'm trying to.
That's it. That's key, man. Being fully present, because as great as this is, it is. I see too often, I hate, you go out to dinner and you see everybody in the family just sitting down at the phones. I'm like, why even bother out together? Nobody's talking to each other. Like, I always had a rule, like, no phones at the table. Like, this is going to be, we're going to make sure, we're going to spend time talking because we're so distracted by other things. You wanted to make sure you preserve a little bit of family time.
Definitely. Yeah, it's that's another thing I try to strike with my friends is just like when we are out together, like, hey, let's just focus on no phones, truly being with people. And the worst thing with me is when I'm with friends and they're like, hey, this bar's not fun, or this restaurant's not cool. It's just like, hey, it doesn't really matter. Probably not even going to remember it if you're going to be honest. Like the food, it's just going to be like the time and the people you're with, like how you felt and experienced there. Even if it's not the most hip, it's like, hey, I was with my friends and I had a good time. Like I cannot remember when I was like, oh, this place was so lame. Like you only remember the people you're with.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing too, so now you're having, a family, growing a family, you're starting to become a solopreneur. Did that ever like cross your mind? Obviously you had your dad and like, that safety net of, hey, like this doesn't work out. You're able to come back to, the family business, practice law. But were you ever just worried about failing and being like, this isn't going to work out. I'm going to fail. I'm going to be, I'm not going to be able to feed my family. Did that ever cross your mind?
So fear, I don't care what anybody says, man. Fear is something, especially if you're a solopreneur, that is, and I think should be present all the time. I think fear is a great motivator, right? Like that fear of failure, that fear of not being able to pay your bills, that fear of, not being able to pay the mortgage is a motivator. That's the thing that's going to keep you up at night. It's going to get you up early. And, when I made the move from New Jersey to Florida, and a lot of people who were my friends at the time and not friends anymore, which says a lot, who were questioning what I was doing and why I was doing it and how I was going to make it work. When people say, what do you do for a living? The answer I gave then is still the answer I give now, which is whatever it takes. And I meant that sincerely because I said, all right, if I'm going to take this risk, if I'm going to sell my house, bring money to my closing, like put all my stuff in storage and move to a house sight unseen, I'm going to make sure that if this doesn't work, I'll do whatever I need to make sure my family can still eat 3 to 5 times this week. But it really was a fear, not a failure, Jack. It was a fear of regret that made me do that. Mm-hmm. And the regret I was fearful of was I didn't want 5, 10, 20 years to go by and go, I wonder what would have happened if I really would have given this Disney thing a shot. I wasn't going to let that happen. I'm like, I'm going to take my chance now. I'm going to go all in and do whatever I can to try and make this work. If it doesn't, I didn't fail. It just wasn't the right thing at the right time, and I'll just move on to something else, and I'll go get a job doing whatever I have to do to make sure, like I said, my family can eat and my kids can go to school, and then I'll just go and figure out what's next.
Lou?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, okay. Sorry, I lost you there for a second. So sorry. I think my headphones finally connected there. But you're talking about fear and doing whatever it takes, and just if it wasn't the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's incredible.
It's not that fear of failure, it's the fear of regret that I think, for me, continues to be my motivating factor and why I don't let opportunity go by, because I never want to look back and say, I wonder what if.
Yeah. No, definitely. And that's incredible, and definitely just got goosebumps just hearing that. And, I wonder just how many people, had a similar idea where it's like, hey, I love Walt Disney. I love the trivia behind it. And, had maybe the same book idea and, didn't go to Barnes and Noble and sit on the ground and, read, how do I send queries out? How do I send, sample chapters out? I always wonder about that. And, this is why I'm so happy I'm talking here, because, you decided to do it. You decided to make the move to Orlando, which, obviously kudos to you for doing that. I admire entrepreneurs like yourself. It's incredible.
Thank you. And it's why I started to, over time, I would always I'd start going to conferences. I love attending conferences. I want to be like a sponge to just learn and be in the room with people who are smarter than me so I can learn. And the more conferences I went to, people started to go, you should share your story and get up on stage and start to speak. And I never even thought about that. So, over time, I started to become a professional speaker, not just at conferences, but to businesses. And then I really wanted to use what I learned and help other people who were in my position that may have had that idea and didn't have the support of people around them or accountability partners or somebody to help encourage them. I learned a lot along the way, Jack, especially because, I was in the infancy of so many different things when I first started, whether it was podcasting or whatever it might be. So I wanted to pay what I learned forward and try and help people turn what they love into what they do, because it's hard to do alone. It's hard if you don't have somebody helping you and supporting you. And I want to sort of be that person for people and show from somebody who's walked the walk that it's possible. Look, I talk about Mickey Mouse for a living, right? So we have a tremendous opportunity and tools at our disposal, but sometimes you need a little bit of help and a push along the way.
Yeah, no, I think your story is incredible. Just, taking that risk. And I would love to just back it up a little bit. So you moved from New Jersey to Orlando, and this is 2003?
No, so I moved from New Jersey to Naples because my parents had moved down there. So I was in Naples for a couple years. My dad passed. I took care of my mom for a while. And then I was driving back and forth from, 4 hours from Naples to Orlando, sometimes a couple of times a week, sometimes like in the same day, which was a grind to say the least. Yeah. But once my mom was settled, I moved up here in 2010, and I live like literally right behind the castle. Like I can hear fireworks at 9:07 every night. I can set my clock to them.
That's awesome. It's a good time to, get ready for bed. Awesome. So obviously, you released the first book in 2003, start podcasting in 2005. Like, how did you actually kind of like build, like Walt Disney, WDW radio? How did you build that as a business? How does that even work, given it is a passion project? Like, how do you get people to, or how do you make money off of that in the first place? Like, it's incredible.
I wish I could say that I sat down and I wrote a business plan. I knew exactly what I was doing, and it's not true at all. It started off and continues to be a passion project. I just figured out how to start making money along the way. So again, this is, 2005 or so, because I had the book in 2004 and I was just sort of, enjoying that and thinking that's all it was really going to be, was this little website. And then I started doing like a little bit of affiliate stuff, and everything changed literally with one phone call one day. I was still living in New Jersey. Phone rings. My wife comes. This is what a phone used to look like. My wife comes downstairs with the phone, and I was like, this woman's like, hey, I'm so-and-so from like ABC company. I love what you do on the podcast. I'd love to sponsor it. What do you charge? And I was like, it happened. It was like slow motion. I was like, what? I had no idea how to even answer her. And I said, listen, let me put together a proposal for you, and I'll send it. And I hung up the phone, and I was like, well, now what do I do? And I'm not kidding. I went to AskJeeves.com, and I was like, how much money to sponsor a podcast? And I guessed, and I was like trying to figure out. And she was my very first sponsor. And I was like, wait a minute, like, I think there is money to be made here. So I started a little bit of sponsorships, a little bit of affiliate marketing type of things. I had my products that I was doing, and it just sort of organically grew into larger sponsorships. Like, I've had a travel agent partner, I think we're going on 19 years that we've been working together. We're very much aligned in terms of vision and growth and community, which really is the heart and soul of what I do. Community's sort of become a marketing buzzword in 2025, 2026, but it really always was the foundation. I started a V-Bulletin discussion forum. Again, this is pre-social media in 2004. And that community grew from 29 people who signed up the first night. And I was like, nobody's even going to find this, to 5, 10, 20, 30, 50,000 people. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's something here. So sponsorship opportunities came up. And again, I learned a lot about and made a lot of mistakes along the way of trying to find sponsors. Like, I literally, man, I would fly down to Florida, and I'd go to Walt Disney World, and there's a lot of third-party operating participants in hotels. I would literally go door to door and knock on the doors and be like, this is who I am, this is what I do, I'd love for you to sponsor. And usually the first question I got was, what the hell's a podcast? Because it was 2005. But I learned, and they learned, and I formed relationships. And the biggest lesson I learned out of all that is, no matter what business we're in the relationship business. And it was all about the foundation of creating relationships with Disney, with partners, with other businesses, with other creators, that led me to be able to grow and monetize. And, if I was to sort of show you, I have this graphic of sort of the two different wheels of how I monetize. There's a lot of sort of hubs and spokes off of it, from everything from physical products to digital products. I published a print magazine. I had additional books. I had audio tours. I had sponsorships. I had affiliate deals. I had in-person events. I had live. So there was a lot of different ways that I was looking to monetize things. I did on the Disney side, and then on sort of the Lou Mongello side, speaking and events and coaching and masterminds and et cetera, all sort of became this holistic way of monetizing the different things that I do.
Yeah, definitely. That's incredible. And how did you prioritize, certain, sponsorship deals, or, we need to go on a cruise, or, I need to do this, or I need to go do public speaking. Obviously it's just yourself, being able to hold yourself accountable, schedule in advance, that's almost a full-time job in itself. How did you, and then you want to grow the business as well. You don't want to just do it, but you want to, hey, look, let's think about 2027. What's next? How can I, secure future cash, for, 2028 and 2030. How did you even go about that?
Again, man, I would love to tell you that I had this full-blown plan laid out, and I had spreadsheets and graphs, and I didn't. I just would sort of figure it out as it would go. And I would learn to juggle and prioritize what and who needed my attention most. And I've gotten better over time. I think that another important lesson that I learned was the word no. And being able to say no, especially to money, is very, very hard. But you have to do that in order to give yourself room and runway so that you can work on the priorities and the things that you want to do, and may, from a financial perspective, will be most profitable and have the best ROI for you.
Definitely. Are there any good examples of where it's hey, you're offered a lot of money, you could have done it, decided to turn it down for some reason, that come to mind, or you're interested in sharing?
Yeah, I think especially for, and I'm thinking sort of lessons that I learned back then that are applicable to where we are now. What I'm seeing from a lot of people who are creators. They want to build their own personal brand. They want to become influencers. And I don't love that word. I think influencer is a gift word. I think you need to demonstrate influence and have somebody else gift you that word. You are an influence because you've demonstrated it. But and I think the mistake I see a lot of people making is, and I tell them this all the time, stop taking free stuff. Like, I remember there was a time period, especially in the Disney space, that like Disney moms were sort of the big, hot, sort of trending thing. And they were taking like free diapers and free clothes. I'm like, you cannot pay your American Express bill with, a crate full of Huggies. You got to learn to start saying no to the free stuff and looking to like really monetize what it is that you are doing. And that I think is a very difficult shift, and sometimes a difficult mountain for some creators to get over, is getting from that, look at all the, I'm unboxing all my free PR stuff, to I've got to say no to this so I can actually start taking money to have brand deals and affiliate programs and things like that.
Definitely. And one thing I wanted to touch back on too was just something that I agree totally. It's a buzzword now, but the community aspect, community this, community that, like social media is like a big community. Obviously not, because you're only posting like the best stuff, and like all the places you go. But would love to kind of just hear like building community within the Disney community. I know you guys do cruises, you have retreats, you do speaking, coaching, trying to build that, but like how you went about building community is something that I'm trying to do when I'm 22, especially when you're in a city like New York. Everyone's doing stuff, everyone's working late. Like how you went about doing that and how you found successful, not successful would be super awesome to hear about.
So the first thing I'll say, which sort of flies in the face for a lot of people of logic, is I am not a numbers guy, Jack. I don't pay attention to the numbers. I don't care about the number of downloads. I don't care about the number of likes and hearts and shares. And yes, obviously revenue is important. If you want to create meaningful, authentic community, you have to build like one person at a time and care at scale. What I said earlier about being in the relationship business applies to not just business relationships, but community as well. Mm-hmm. Forming my community early on with my discussion forums, and it went through a lot of different places and machinations. Like now my community for the most part lives in Facebook groups. I don't care about trying to get that next listener or download. I care and I put my attention on nurturing the people who are already there. Because if and when you do that, they will not only become, you treat your fans like they're friends, and they will become your most loyal evangelists. So to that point, I have never spent a single dime on marketing, ever. I've never other than just like to play around with like Facebook Ad Manager. I've never placed an ad. I've never paid for likes or hearts or follows or anything like that. What I do is I focus on the people who are there, and they are the ones who go out and say, oh, you like Disney? You should come into this community because A, B, and C. That is the way you grow meaningful, authentic community. And if you genuinely care about every single person, when you do finally have that ask, when you've got that offer, the book, the audio tour, the event, the cruise, whatever it is, that community that you've been giving so much value to for free with no expectation of anything in return for so long, they want to help you, right? They're going to buy your thing, one, because they like you and but they want to help you and they want to support you, and they will sort of be the ones that will help market it for you. And I think that is sometimes the thing that, one, is people have to realize is not a short-term thing. It is a long-term, like consistent everyday thing. But it is, I think for me, the way to remain consistent and have just consistency not only in growth, but in terms of revenue as well, by just sort of, I'm going to use a word that's not thrown around in business that often, but you have to like love on your community, man, and they will pay back dividends, X-fold.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm a really big believer, and just you get what you give, with people, with relationships, and if you're giving your all, your heart, and you're just like, hey, I love it. I love you guys. You treat me well whenever, you need, like you said, that ask, or, hey, maybe you're down on your luck for a little bit. Can someone help me out? You've been there for a while. These people are going to, have your back.
Without a doubt. And here's a quick example of that. When COVID happened, every part of my business shut down. The Disney parks closed. All my speaking gigs went away. I couldn't do in-person events on either side of things. But I had a Patreon community that I had started years earlier, which I was afraid to do because I hate asking for money. That got me through COVID. And I was afraid that when COVID happened, everybody's going to bail because people are out of work, money's not coming in. And the opposite happened. People were like, hey, man, we understand that your world is shutting down. What can we do to try and help you? And my Patreon actually went up during COVID, which was wild and very much unexpected and really a testament to the community.
Yeah, that's incredible, actually. And yeah, I can't even imagine how grateful and, blessed you must have felt, during COVID when, you probably could have been like, hey, I'm not going to make money for, maybe 3 years almost. But, having those people and those relationships, and especially, you're doing these talking events, building that community. And I can't imagine how many friendships that you've created, which, it must just be incredible to be like, hey, I've, maybe even marriages for all I know.
Yeah, there's been a lot of marriages and divorces and all kinds of that have come from the community because, it brings like-minded people together. And look, the people who are my best friends now are people that I've met through this incredible journey that, was very much not what I had on my bingo card when I was in high school and college thinking I was going to be a lawyer for the rest of my life.
Definitely. That's incredible. And just going a little back to 2017s, mid 2010s when your kids are, high school, going to college, how did you pretty much balance, or not even balance, just how did you end up growing your business? Where you're doing the speaking side of things, getting better every single year, where it's let's get 1% better every day. How did you grow your business every day? Obviously, I know you have the group cruises, the meetups, park gatherings, kind of those private events, and then the podcast, the live streams, the merch, and all of that. But how did you, continue to grow it, decide what you want to focus on more? Definitely a long-winded question, but...
So the short-winded answer is you get complacent and you die. So for me, I'm never sort of satisfied where I am. I'm always looking to what's next. The day a new podcast comes out, I'm working on the next one. The day a product comes out or an event is over, I'm already looking to what's next. For me, I just got off a cruise with my travel partner. We're talking about plans for 2027, 2028. We're looking that far ahead. And because I'm now in multiple spaces that are very noisy, very crowded, you have to answer the question, why you? What's your differentiator? So for me, I've always been trying to not follow a trend, but I'm always trying to see what's next. What can I do that other people aren't doing? I've been doing live video every week since 2007. I literally used to walk around the parks with my laptop and a 3G card and a wired webcam and this huge battery pack on my shoulder, as if I wasn't a nerd enough, walking around Disney World talking to a laptop before people were live streaming. And people what is this lunatic doing? Go ride the rides. But now everybody's, in their parks with their phones and they're all live streaming. So I was all right, well, how can I do 360 video? How can I do this? How can I go to different platforms? And that consistently is that fire that's under me to say, what's next? And that's what I was doing, even when my kids were growing up. But it also goes back to your question about how did I scale when I had my family? That's really when sacrifice started to come into play, because you'd have to start to say, I can't do this thing because I have this other obligation. And I think, and I hope, and time will tell, my kids learned by watching the balance of putting family first, but also having to understand I might not be able to do this thing with you guys because I do have this obligation. I do have my commitment, and I'll find a way to make it up, and we'll make up that time some other way. But I've also been able, look, again, I talk about Disney for a living, so I've been able to take my kids on cruises and trips to Italy and London and Japan as part of what I do. So hopefully they're learning a lot about business. They're learning a lot about balance and family and entrepreneurship and, maybe some things I haven't even considered yet.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, you learning so much from your dad in business, it always comes with, a little space. And, I've learned a lot from my dad just being away from him. And I know Mike, the guy who connected us, Mike Goodwin, shout out him. He like was talking about my dad and how he's so great at his job. And, it's like, hey, that's my dad. I don't really think about that because, he's my dad. And, but it's just incredible seeing that, other perspective and getting to hear someone else talk about him and, not yourself because, that's my dad at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's always, it's weird, as this whole thing has progressed. And look, man, I've had incredible opportunities along the way that my kids have been able to witness and be a part of. And I know it's like, it would be weird for them sometimes, like if I'd get recognized in the parks or if I'd be like doing a TV spot, but they also get to be exposed to things. And I wonder, like, when I'm not around, do they go like, my dad's actually pretty cool. Like he knows this person and he goes to this place. Like, yeah.
I definitely think they do. It's just like when I'm talking to my dad, you don't want to be like, wow, you're cool. You've done a lot of awesome stuff, but
Right.
you can boast behind his back for him. Yeah, no, that's incredible. That's great. So, post COVID comes, would love to hear kind of your plans for growth there and kind of how that's been going since. I bet it's kind of been crazy. But how that went, like what your plan was from there. And I know you don't really do plans, but that's the way how it works.
Yeah, it's, again, it's figuring out along the way. It's figuring out what do I want to do, right? What serves me and what serves the people that I am trying to help? What are the gaps that I can fill? What are the problems that I can solve? And what are the things that I want to do? I still love setting out those personal challenges for myself, whether it's creating a course, building something new, doing a different type of event. Yes, it's to try and help, and yes, it's to try and generate revenue, but I'm like, can I do it? And what can I learn from it? And what can I do that's different than other people? I think post-COVID, the thing for me that admittedly I knew I needed to do for years, I'm really bad at asking for help. And I'm even worse at receiving help. But you can only scale yourself so big by yourself. And when you're in a service business, you can only say yes to so much. You can only be in so many places. So starting to build a team and surrounding myself with people that I could trust, also a downfall of mine, but having been burned in the past, but finding people that I could trust to say, go do this thing or help me out with this. And getting somebody, like I have somebody now who's sort of like my right-hand person, and she's been great. And she's been a godsend because it frees up some of that time so I can do the things that I am uniquely qualified to do, but also help me scale and keep me accountable and do some of those other tasks that, one, I might not be good enough at, and two, I might just not have the bandwidth to do on my own. So learning to scale and build team will allow me to sort of cast a much wider net than I've been able to do in the past.
That's incredible. And what do you think you're uniquely positioned to do nowadays?
I have no idea. I have no idea. Well, no, look, I mean, only I can, record the podcast, right? Mm-hmm. I still edit my own show. I enjoy the creative process of it. Only I can go out and speak. Only I can host my conference. Only I can do the one-on-one coaching or masterminds or whatever it is. But there are some things that I can offload, and again, I have to just be able to trust that they can get done. I know I'm a micromanager, and I'm getting better. 1% every day probably in doing that. But there are some things that I'll never offload. Like I will, and I've had friends and people in my space be like, Mongello, you should not. I answer every email, every message, every DM, every Facebook post, Instagram comment personally. Because if you're going to take the time to email me or message me, you better believe I'm going to give you the courtesy of a personal response. I will never offload that to somebody else. You get an email from me or you write to me, I am going to be the person. It might take me a little while, but I am going to be the person who responds, and I'll never let that go.
Definitely. And I think that's incredible because it goes back to the sense where, hey, it's building community. We're listening to your podcast. We're a part of, the Disney community, and we know Lou's the man. People, like, you could easily offload it, but then they lose that human touch and hey, like, this is
and
Lou.
The trust, man. Like, I've spent years building trust, which is the most valuable thing you can have, and you could lose it in a heartbeat if somebody else is replying not authentically as you, or I see other people go, why don't you have AI answer your email? I'm like, are you insane? like there is no day ever on this planet that some invisible AI bot is going to answer email for me.
Yeah, definitely agree with that as well. And I would just love to hear kind of like what is the coolest and the favorite things you've done in your career so far, whether that be getting to meet people with your family, just like in general, speaking events. Like, what are you kind of like, hey, this is the coolest stuff, like, pinch me, am I even alive?
Listen, man, I am very blessed to have done some incredible things I never could have imagined. I have traveled all over the planet with my family, with my community for speaking. I've been to, I think I mentioned, Italy, England, China, the Philippines, Japan twice. I'm going to Singapore next month. I've been to China 3 or 4 times. I've been able to go around the planet and visit incredible places. And I'm reluctant to say this, but I want you to hear what I'm saying, not as, oh, look who I get to interview, but as a Disney fan, the opportunities that have come to me, the places that I've been able to go and things I've been able to see, whether it's, Walt Disney's apartment or being on the studio lot or, being in the Marvel offices or interviewing Julie Andrews, like Kevin Feige, the president of Marvel Studios, I've been friends with for years because he's been a listener for years. And when I first met him and he's like, yeah, man, like your show got me through the making of Iron Man. I was like, what did you say? And can you say that again on the podcast? Like, I could never imagine. Like I just looked up, as you can see, I'm a big Marvel Spider-Man. A listener put me and in a panel of Spider-Man 700 because he knew I was a huge Spider-Man fan. So I have that signed copy by Stan Lee up on my wall. Like that's crazy. Like the comic books I used to read as a kid. Like now my name is in there, like interviewing J. Jonah Jameson in a Marvel comic. Like everything here has a story, and I don't know, man. It's a heck of a lot better than being a lawyer. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's incredible, and that just blessings. That's really all I can say is doing business with people you love and having that trust and community, and like you said, you never knew where it was going to take you. You were just figuring it out, going day by day. Like let's keep growing this. Let's get more people involved, which that's what's I think the coolest part about the business. Your business grows through more community and getting more people involved, and it's literally just a win-win for everyone, which is not as many people can say that about their business.
The greatest reward, and I mean this sincerely, is having a positive impact on other people, whether it's on the Disney side, you get an email from somebody, or you meet somebody at an event, or you do things with Make-A-Wish, and they say that because of your show, you've impacted me in a profound way that I never could have imagined when I started talking about Mickey Mouse. It's why on the business side of things, I want to help people I want people to feel the same way I do every day about getting up for work and loving what they do and having a positive impact, because I think there's a ripple effect on other people. And those have been the greatest rewards, man. Like when I have my momentum event and somebody comes to me at the end and they're crying because their business or their life has been transformed in a trajectory that they never could have imagined. I'm like, this is it. Like, that's why I do what I do. The money, like, money's great and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, my kids are eating 3 to 5 times a week, but it is those moments and those unexpected things that you hear from people, and you're like, this is it. This is why I do it. This is why I stay up late. This is what makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like, that's why I love doing this podcast too, because I get to hear people's stories like yourself. And, you know, I hope to do something like what you did and, you know, take the risk. And I love your story in particular because, you know, you were what, early 30s, lawyer, you know, safe job, did it all, had a family, moved down to Florida and just figured it out. And, you know, you inspire other people now, which is just incredible. And I know obviously you're the founder of the Dream Team Project, which is like the Make-A-Wish and sending kids to Walt Disney, which is just incredible, you know, using your platform for that and, you know, for good. And it's just awesome.
Yeah, it's the charity stuff is the heart and soul of what I do. And again, it goes back to community. Like, we raised $550 some odd $1,000 for Make-A-Wish, and that's not me. That's the people who have come together and rallied around auctions and events and running teams and charity things and you know, people coming together to make a positive difference on the lives of others.
Yeah, that's incredible. And just knowing that you kind of, you know, helped organize it in some sense is awesome too. Just giving, you know, them a platform to donate and, you know, give a difference. And just with the speaking stuff as well, where it's like, hey, you know, this can be you. Do you have any good stories in particular where, you know, people you inspired? I know you kind of have a retreat as well, and you host workshops a lot. Any good stories where it's like, hey, someone told me and I'm like, wow, I didn't even know I could inspire someone like that.
Yeah, when you know, when somebody comes to me and they say, I heard your story and I was inspired, and because of you, like, there's somebody she's now like one of my closest friends. I had a meet of the month here, and she came and she's like, yeah, I heard your story about being a lawyer, and I just left my job too. And I was like, wow, that's cool. She's like, yeah, I went to Columbia undergrad and Harvard Law School, and I worked for one of these big 3 firms. I'm like, whoa, that's not the job you're supposed to be leaving. But she was miserable, right? And now she does what she, you know, loves. She does Disney photography, and she's able to sort of do these things that bring her joy. And you find a way to make it work, and you find a way to monetize it, and, you know, you live a life that you dream of. When I hear things like that, or people come to my event, or I see people years later and they say, because of you, this is where I am, there really is nothing better. Whether, you know, I remember there was a guy who, you know, we talk about writing a book. I think everybody sort of has this book in them that they want to write, but only 1% of people actually write it. So I told this one guy, look, man, you got to, like, make a sacrifice. I know you have a job. I know you got a family. You got to get up a half hour early and write 500 words a day. And I was like, I'll help you do it. And I used to, like, text him or call him in the morning, like, and my wife one morning, she looks over and she's like, who the heck are you texting at 5:30 in the morning? I'm like, I'm texting Roger. And then I was at a conference 5-6 years later, and some guy comes up and he bear hugs me from behind. I have no idea who it is. And he shoves this book in my face and he's crying. And he's like, because of you getting up and calling me every morning, like, I finally wrote my book and now I'm getting on stage to speak about it. Like, that's it, man. Like, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, that is really all what it's about. Just inspiring others for, you know, change and for better. And it's just an incredible story. And I know you do speaking for corporations as well, and kind of incorporating Walt Disney's principles. I'd love to just hear kind of like, you know, your top 1 or 2 favorite things about Walt Disney, and I guess like what drew you to Disney in the first place. It's just like really interesting to me.
I mean, I always wondered, like, what it was about this place that drew us back year over year. And the more I learned about it, the more I became fascinated by how they were able to build this city in the middle of the swamp that is operating 24/7, 365, and not just bringing millions of people, but creating so much joy and happiness. And as I became an employer, I was like, how do they get such performance out of their frontline workers who are not getting paid, a ton of money, and they're in the Florida heat in double knit polyester? So I really wanted to learn more about the business workings of Disney and realize that there are practical and tactical lessons that any business of any size can take from the Disney parks and easily apply to what they do in terms of customer service, customer experience, and brand loyalty. There's no other company on the planet, I will argue this to anybody, that has the brand loyalty that Disney does. I'm not the only lunatic that moved here. I'm not the only lunatic that has an annual pass or lives behind the castle and comes year after year. And what does Disney do to make that happen? Prices go up, it's hot, it's crowded. People don't care. They still keep coming back. There are a lot of those principles that you can apply to whatever it is that you do. And I've spoken to everything from tractor manufacturers to associations of gardeners and funeral directors and religious organizations and law firms about ways that they can take some of those lessons from Disney and leadership lessons, I think, from Walt, who failed over and over and over again and was told no and nearly went bankrupt and had all these. There are inspirational lessons you can take from him as a leader, and I think there's a lot of customer service lessons you can take from the Disney parks as well.
Definitely. Yeah, that's what's the number one lesson you've taken away?
God, so this is going to be the lame answer, but it's true. For all of the sage advice that Walt Disney had about business and being the consummate entrepreneur and being told no and being defeated over and over again, one of my favorite quotes from Walt is that a man should never neglect his family for business. However busy he was, like he drove his kids to school and Saturday was daddy's day and he made sure he spent that time with his daughters. And as busy as we all are, and we're all like, someday you will do this too. Your son or daughter's going to come in and say, hey, can we do this? Like, listen, I'm in the middle of something. I can't, it's easy to do that. And you're like, oh God, I shouldn't have done that. I should have taken the 5 minutes. If Walt Disney, who's building this, like the biggest media and entertainment empire on the planet, can spend his Saturday mornings with his daughters, like we could make sure to be like, you know what? That email could wait. That proposal, that whatever it is, that product can wait to go have dinner, to go play ball with my kids, to go take them to the park, whatever it is. And that always has to sort of be a guiding light and something that sticks in the back of your mind, I think, especially as a parent.
Definitely. And also just, I feel like understanding that logic, you're able to, hey, when I am putting in work and I'm, working and my kids are at school or doing this, like, you're putting 110% in. So then when they are back home, like I'm, hey, I'm going to be fully present with them, like we're talking, because worst thing is, you're hanging out with someone or, you're on the phone and you can tell someone's brain somewhere else. And it's just like, okay, like I'll just call you later, when I can have your full attention. Yeah. So that's great. And so I know, congrats to you on being inducted into the Podcast Hall of Fame in 2025. That must be pretty cool, right? I know you've been doing it since what, 05? Is that right?
05, yeah.
That's pretty.
Yeah, it was a very unexpected honor and privilege. And look, man, that really, this is not false humility. That has nothing to do with me. Like, that doesn't happen without community. It doesn't happen with people listening and supporting and telling others about you, because otherwise, how would other people find you? But it is an honor and something I take very seriously, and I like to pay it forward and hopefully try and help others, especially in the podcasting space, which I still love and believe in very, very strongly as such a very powerful medium. I want to be able to help them on their podcasting journey too.
Yeah, no, and I really appreciate you coming on here. I know I don't have too many episodes, but what I loved when we had our conversation was, And I feel like there's a lot of like business podcasts or just stuff that like just talk like, leadership and everything. I just want to have a conversation, and just be honest, learn about, just ask questions everyone has. Because I'm young, a lot of people don't know a lot. It's just like if we can have these conversations where people can be a fly on the wall. I hope they take stuff away from this conversation, and hearing an inspiring story like yours. And I hope to give them a platform where they can hear it and, be inspired to, listen to your story and, take that leap of faith.
No, I dig this format a lot, man. I've done, hundreds of podcast interviews, and I will always prefer something like this because it is just a genuine conversation that hopefully somebody else is sitting there and feeling like they are a part of. And if they take one little nugget away, then it's worth it, right? It's worth it for them. That's where the value proposition and the exchange for their most valuable commodity, which is their time, is all about. And, it's not scripted, and you don't send me questions in advance. Like, it's just a conversation. And I dig this a lot. And I appreciate the opportunity to be able to join you.
Yeah, definitely. And what would you want the audience to take away? Like one little tidbit.
As simple as it sounds, man, I think life is too short not to do what you love every day. And whatever that thing is that you love, like, don't push it aside. Don't wait till you're retired. Don't wait till you have time. Don't wait, and I'm victim of this too sometimes, of what I call as soon as like, I'll do this thing as soon as I finish this, and I never get to it. I have stacks of books back here that I'm going to read as soon as I'm done with all these projects. The books are almost a metaphor for all the other things or people or opportunities or, things that we want to pursue that we don't because we're so busy sort of caught up in the daily circle of life. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. So find that thing that you love and find a way to, pursue your passion every day.
Yeah. And your story is incredible. Just literally, putting all your chips on the table and pursuing your passion because, who knows if I would be talking to attorney Lou right now, but I'm talking to the best Lou right now.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, man. I'm grateful and blessed every day.
Yeah. Definitely gratitude is something I'm trying to, get better at practicing. Just like, hey, like stuff I'm thankful for, even, if it's not a great day. Even if it's like hey, got to work out, do push-ups, even my health, that's something I'm super, super, super lucky to have.
Every day on this side of the dirt is a good day, man. That's how I look at it.
My dad loves like the Pitbull line, every day above ground is a good day. It's like Pitbull. He loves that. Awesome. Well, I usually try to wrap it up with one question, and it's inspired by how I built this. Guy Raz, he kind of inspired me to do this podcast because I was like, hey, I love listening to entrepreneur stories. But the one how he always closes it is, how much of your success do you attribute to, the working from 7 a.m. till 2 a.m. and how much of it do you contribute to luck, or how much of it do you chop it up to luck or kind of being on the right place at the right time?
I think it would be a horrible exercise in ego to not give credit to, call it luck, call it karma, call it God, whatever it is, to all the universe, whatever that thing is for you. Like for me, I'm a spiritual person. So, I think God has given me a lot of incredible opportunities and has opened the door for me. My family, my immediate family, my extended family, I would not be here if it wasn't for them. Like, as I was going on this journey and I was taking all these risks and I had young kids and my wife would be like, go do your thing. Like, I got this. I'll manage the fort at home. My father giving me the opportunity to go and pursue this thing and say, hey, listen, you've got a job to come back to. Friends who encouraged me, strangers who encouraged me, who gave me their time and gave me their encouragement. That's 99.9% of the reason why I'm here. The hustle and the grind and the sacrifice and the time is a small part. And every single person who has been an active or passive member of this community and extended family, like, that's it, man. That's the reason,
Hey, Lou. Hey. Yeah, I think we are. I think we just lost you. Oh, dang it. Okay, there
Hello?
you are. I have no idea what
So
happened.
I have no idea what happened, man. I'm sorry. Um,
Hey, good for the authentic podcast,
so
Yeah, so you're saying just like that 1% was the 0.1%, the luck, the grind, the showing up every day.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
oh,
I owe a lot to a lot of people for allowing me and pushing me to get here.
yeah, definitely. And what kind of fuels you for the future?
The unknown, like I dig it, man. I dig not knowing what's around the next corner. I dig not knowing what the next year or 5 years is going to look like. What opportunity is going to come up? What technology is going to come up? What I do is so very dynamic, and that's part of what excites me because every day is I know is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, that's awesome, and keeping you on your toes, and always looking for the next, the next big thing. And just keeping yourself hungry.
Yeah, man.
Awesome. Well, Lou, thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed telling your story, and it's incredible. So I really appreciate you for taking your time.
No, man. Thank you so much for inviting me and being so generous with your time, allowing me to share the story. And I appreciate the opportunity. If there's ever anything I can do to help you or anybody who's listening, I mean it when I say to feel free to reach out anytime.
Yeah, I really hope someone takes you up on that. That would be incredible for me, because, like I said, you have a great story, and just a genuine person. So really appreciate you, Lou.
Thank you, man. Thank you. This was
Thank
awesome.
you. Thanks so much for listening to that episode with Lou Mongello. Hope his story really inspires you to take risk, follow your passion, and build something meaningful that you truly care about. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a 5-star review. It really helps the show reach more listeners. And thanks so much for tuning in again. I'll see you in the next episode, and hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Stay blessed.